2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, home of the best chat on the internet. Now, while our studios may be in low Earth orbit, I am personally broadcasting from Treaty 1 land, which is also the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Now, we've got a great show for you today, but first, a couple of quick announcements. One, I've got another Hot Mic review up. I took a look at Sony Animation's Wish Dragon that just came out on Netflix last week. You'll find the link in the description. I think it's worth checking out, or at least the review. What else? Oh, I also want to give you a heads up, folks, that we are actually going to be interviewing this great guy. We've got a special guest coming. We're going to interview him at the top of the hour, Professor Eric R. Williams. I've talked about this man before, especially about his book, The Screenwriter's Taxonomy, a big reference tool for me. And so, yeah, I recommend, for Eric and for the show we've got planned for you next week, which we'll announce later, it's going to be a banger. Make sure you mark it in your calendar. Yeah. What else? Now, okay. Now I know. Why don't let's welcome my co-host, the man with the most, Mr. Jim Cheboyko. Hello, sir.
Ooh, I like that little piano entry. I should get a gin and tonic or something.
Only the best for you, baby.
Thank you.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Busy, hectic day actually for a Sunday because I often work until just about time for the show, so I did that. I also managed to get my second.
I was gonna say.
COVID shot this morning. My son ran in and said, "Hey, they got."
I'm not the only one with.
Yeah.
How can you tell it's on a green sticker, eh?
Yeah, I have mine on the back of my laptop here, so that's cool. Yeah, so it was very spontaneous, but I ran up to the north end of the city and got my shot at the Leela Sporting Complex, which sometimes you go to these neighborhoods that feel like you're in a different city. Like, I didn't even know this place existed. It's like an airplane hangar. It's gigantic. But so I got it there. Everyone was super cool. It felt vaguely, with the tents and the outdoor washrooms, it felt vaguely like a folk fest teaser, but alas, there is no music. So just shots. So
well, that is awesome.
Yeah. So I'm a Pfizer Moderna kid, so I guess that means I'll be able to control lightning. I'm not sure what the side effects or the powers are. So
I for those who follow me on other social media, including TikTok, you'll find out what I think the 2 vaccines, 2 doses, 2 shots,
yes,
the superpower it gives you, the magic ability it gives you,
the Canadian
so
superpower.
You'll need to check those out. What else is going on with you? I understand we've got a new file. I believe it's called the Jim's Who the Beep Approved That. Who the Beep Asked for That. What did you notice this week, Jim, that you're like, really?
So, yeah, I mean, lost in all the sort of all the other detritus of modern life. They kind of quietly announced, it's not even in the Wikipedia, I was just looking at it before, it's not even in the Wikipedia profile here, is that the Beauty and the Beast character of Gaston, they're going to start some sort of series with Gaston and Le Fou, his lackey, for lack of a better term. For lackey of a better term. Yeah, and... So yeah, it's going to be an 8-episode series. It's going to be musical, apparently, which is something I didn't realize before. And they're sort of introducing a half-sister of LeFou as I guess the female component of the to round out the trio. I don't know, but it's sort of like other people that they've taken a look at, like Cruella. He ultimately ends up a bad guy. So, a lot of times,
terrible villain.
yeah, and hyper masculine and that kind of toxic masculinity. So I sort of wonder how, in this day and age, how they're going to play that. I think back in the day, and if you're looking back, because Beauty and the Beast came out in the early 90s, he was almost like he wasn't meta, and he wasn't exactly like Alan Rickman's Sheriff of Nottingham, but it was sort of that, like, he was supposed to be charming and he turned out to be a dick, right? And that's or he's supposed to be like a
leader of the community.
Yeah, a virile potential
paladin
mate,
of sorts.
a potential mate for Belle, right? And only he had a horrible, unworthy personality that was completely not savable. So anyway, so Disney wants to go with this.
I'm going to quote Ted Lasso here. It's like we've got an ace, but his personality turned him into a 7 of clubs.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's something like that. So I sort of just I had texted you about it. I heard it. I was sort of on a break from work, and I just said, "What is this?" And especially since we just took a look at Cruella, we're trying to decide if it was, had a purpose, or if it was just a way to fill out a schedule, or a way to collect bucks, or to cash in on existing properties. I sort of think that Frozen sort of came from nowhere and became gigantic. And you have to direct resources that are finite to these projects, right? So why not try something else new instead of something that's in the past, right? I don't know. It's that brand recognition thing, right? And Gaston already exists. He's got a knowable name. He's got a certain kind of profile. Let's capitalize on that, right? And all that people are familiar with the character, they'll be comfortable coming back to him. It's part of the Disney Plus. It'll be on the Disney Plus channel, of course.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're taking a page from Marvel in a strange kind of way, I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
It's still in the embryonic stages. I think there are some notes about what form it'll take and that kind of thing. But it's.
I think you hit it on the nail before. Well, we did it with Cruella. Let's try this. I don't think they even need to look at their corporate, and it's all part of the same operation, right? Who owns Marvel? Yeah, but I doubt they even needed to look that far. Heck, Marvel hasn't even done that. They've never made a movie about a villain. And yes, there have been critics who've said that the Infinity War movies, Infinity War and Infinity War Endgame, were the main character. The character that drives all the action is Thanos, but it's still not the Thanos story.
Yeah, exactly. He's sort of the out of control, the ball that's rolling down after Indy, but
yeah,
I don't want to give away anything, but you know what I mean? Like it's that sort of out of control. It's that crazy man theory of any kind of fiction where it's like one individual that's sort of irrational. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't let's move on?
No,
unless you got anything more to add.
And you think that the audience is going to be sure. I was just going to say the audience for this would probably be children to some extent. So it kind of be like having the crab for Moana have his own series, which I will. Can I copyright that? I don't know if I can get to that first before they do.
I may actually find that interesting. Well, and I think that's.
Actually, well, yeah.
Cruella was such a great villain. So cartoonish in her villainy. Bash them, thump them, gas them.
Yeah.
That I was fascinated with how are they going to turn that around. Mm-hmm. The Crab, again, another so richly villainous. I would be interested in that property, in that take.
Well,
I have zero
I watched
interest in
something about the
Gaston.
crab.
We know that douchebag. Why do I
Yes,
need to know
yeah.
origin story on an asshole?
And a bunch of Gastons just overran the capital in DC. So do we really need, that kind of that kind of character? And kids watching that kind of character too. I mean, it's
Yeah,
funny.
I don't. And does it actually come to fruition? Is
Yeah.
this something? Well, we've announced kind of vaporwary. Oh well. Anything else, Jim, on that?
No. I think
Okay.
that's that's the extent of it. Curious.
All right. Well, then let's get to work.
You bet.
All right, folks. Tonight we are going to be looking at the J.J. Harper story. Cowboys and Indians, the J.J. Harper story. Here's the log line that I was. Here's my log line. First Nations community leader J.J. Harper is shot to death by police constable Robert Cross on his way home one snowy night in Winnipeg. The impact of the shooting continues to reverberate through our community here in Winnipeg, through our province, Manitoba, and through Canada to this day. Cowboys and Indians was directed by Winnipeg director Norma Bailey from a screenplay written by Andrew Rye Burzens, based in large part on the book Cowboys and Indians, The Shooting of J.J. Harper by Gordon Sinclair Jr., Winnipeg Free Press writer, reporter. The film stars local Manitoba boy Adam Beach. It also stars Eric Schweig, Curry Graham, Gary Chalk, and Gordon Tutusis. How did it fare on our social ingredients label? Would it have qualified for a reframe stamp? No. Was it union made? I actually, from personal knowledge, know at least the Canadian Actors Union, ACTRA. It was an actor shoot, but as far as the crew goes, I'm not 100% sure, so give it half marks. That's the best I think we can do. Did it pass the Bechdel test? No, it did not. And last but certainly not least, is it class conscious? And I would say, yeah, to its bones, it is at least conscious of class. And it's hard to say whatever. I've seen a film where I'm like, boy, that is the Winnipeg working class experience. Anyway, so with that out of the way, I guess that gives us a Cowboys and Indians, a 1.5 out of 4 on our social ingredients label. With that done, let's get Jim back on the screen here. And Jim, let's get your... and folks, you're going to notice we've made a few tweaks to our programming. Really just a bit of label change to help us after in our second life as a Jim and Rob review. But Jim, yes. Why don't you start? Give us your quick review of this flick.
Sure. A few years ago, probably 90s and 2000s, CBC was actually CBC and whatever co-production partners they had put out some pretty good. This is a made-for-TV movie. You may be able to tell it from some of the shots or the quality of the camera or something like that, but they put out some pretty good made-for-TV movies. I was just thinking of that today, and I haven't watched a made-for-TV movie in a long time. I don't know if it's more that streaming services are taking that kind of thing over, but this I was really quite pleasantly surprised. I don't know why, and I didn't think it would be bad. I was wondering if it would be dated or this is an 18-year-old movie now. It moved well. On its face, it's not sort of it's not one of those. It doesn't have the elements that would grab you by the collar, like especially after the death of J.J. Harper. But it was really well done, I thought, and especially that opening sequence where you had several things going on. It reminded me of sort of current American television. It was really well put together, where they had a crime in progress, and they had J.J. Harper independently walking home innocently, and of course he gets, hey, you match the description bullshit that that has fallen on so many
Not even
people.
that. Hey, you.
Yeah.
Give me
I'm
some
gonna
ID.
bust your chops for 5 minutes, but that first segment had this sort of this nauseating inevitability about it. It had tension. I thought it was very well done. And then the rest of the movie sort of talked about all the after effects and that kind of thing. It was very subtle. The gentleman that played Inspector Dowson, I think his name's Gary Chalk. He was really subtle. He was great as your sort of failing up your mediocre policeman. In so many things that we watch, we see these sort of superhero policemen that and the forensics guys that one guy does the bullet stuff and the fingerprints and everything else, but this one is sort of about how mediocre they are, and that was kind of a surprise too. And they're super committed to their mediocrity, and even as it's swirling the drain, he can't even say print, do the prints on the gun, and you can sort of see it in his eyes that he's, anyway. But I thought it was fascinating. I thought. Probably not enough Adam Beach, but it's sort of hard to fit him in when his character dies. Eric Schweig, I don't know why he's he's had actually quite a big career. He's been in a lot of different things, and he's had about a 30-year career at this point. He's a fascinating guy in real life, but he was good. Some of it was very naturalistic. There was a part where a man was telling a story in an office, and he was slunk down on the couch with a cigarette, telling, like anybody that we know when you're sort of shooting the shit with buddies.
In the late 80s.
Super naturalistic. I thought he was great. Just a solid cast. Very subtle. A lot of every film is a historical document. So you saw buildings that don't exist anymore, like the Remand Center and that kind of thing. But it's sort of hard to celebrate, 80s and 90s Winnipeg when it's about the murder of J.J. Harper. And it's interesting, in the Wikipedia entry, it says Robert Cross, who murdered J.J. Harper, and there's no fine tuning about it. It's but anyway, so yeah, I thought it was well directed, well acted. I thought it held up well. I thought it's a kind of an important movie as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So what did you think?
For myself, okay, a little, in the interest of full disclosure, I was almost cast to play Gordon Sinclair in this film. And when I say almost, let's put big air quotes on almost. I was at the time, because is just as I was burning out of the local film industry, but I did have an ACTRA apprentice card. And that's how I know it was at least the actors were like under the actor agreement. So I got to do an audition, and then I got a call back. I think it was totally, like, my beard was thick at the time. I think it was totally, he's kind of got the look. Whoa, you're short. Pat Burns was the better guy to play him. And the character is barely in this movie, which I think was a great choice, even though it's mostly based on his reporting. Mm-hmm. That said, so anything that sounds negative, maybe that I'm just being pissy that I didn't get the role that could have been my breakout role.
Yeah.
As far as the film goes, I had the same, this is movie of the week. Oh, so Canadian cheap. But I got into it quite quickly. It's a nice, well laid out story. I think they picked basically 3 characters to follow, let's say. Harry, Robert Cross, and then Ken Dowson. And I think those are the right three characters to follow in this. And they kept it as personal and human as they could. It wasn't very reporterly. While at the same time, I did over the last few days, Jim, read the whole section of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry report on the shooting. It kept very close to the facts. So I was, and yeah, by the end of it, I was emotionally moved. I will argue with you. I thought Chalk's performance, and we'll get into more of the details later. Sure. And this is not a spoiler. It was a fact, but I'll even wait for that. I just didn't buy his resolution, let's say.
Okay.
I didn't buy it because it was too subtle a drop.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
I do like what I think this really captured was not just I wouldn't say mediocrity. I would say, yeah, these are a bunch of human beings. Like, it really does kind of pull the veil off these police's incorruptible kind of special human beings. It's like, nope, we've got people who have never been tested this way, and they have a hard time dealing with it. Even there's a moment when one of the characters, tries to get psychiatric help, and it's like, you really get the idea that the whole police department, and was the Winnipeg Police Department in 1988, was all about, Jim, protecting itself. And it did that so well in drawing how this department trying to protect itself. The only other quibble I'd have with it, I'd say, is, did it capture as well as it could have? Winnipeg was changing at the time. It's why there was an inquiry so quickly. But did it capture just how, a lot of stuff that would not be said now. It doesn't mean that those feelings aren't out there now, that bigotry, racism, all these issues. It's still here now today. But it was just a lot louder. It was a lot more public. And that would be, if I've got a quibble, I think that could have, I would have liked to have seen a bit more than that. But otherwise, yeah, I was really impressed. At 88 minutes, including credits. And it communicated what it needed to without embellishing. It's never once gilded the lily. Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting watching the credits going, been on a movie with him, worked on a movie with him.
Yeah.
Same with her. Like, I knew half the crew, which was kind of, I remember them from when I was in the local film industry, which was kind of cool. And then I even saw my old workplace, because half of the thing was shot at City Hall.
Well,
so it's like...
Yeah, City Hall and the courts and the ledge and
ledge, a lot at the ledge, yeah.
When he's
you recognize your current workplace.
There's a scene where Harry's overhearing a conversation in a washroom. That's the washroom I use at the ledge. I like okay.
Those old school, yeah.
That's my sink.
Okay. I think I know your answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is it? Oh, excuse me. Is it worth our audience's time? Was it worth your time? Is it worth their time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Again, also, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. This stuff's still going on. So
yeah. And that's something I think I'm looking forward to digging into, because there's. I'm just going to say I agree with you, Jim, because I do want to jump ahead now. I want to get into that, because there are for such a slight, what you might think is a slight body, there's a lot of meat on these bones. Okay, but first, why don't we take a moment to welcome the folks in the chat?
Yeah. We're
right.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay, we have got, here we are, Vlad65. How you doing, man? It looks like he's actually going to be back in a bit, but he can watch it again and then see that we properly welcomed him.
Yes.
And then we've got Richard and Katie back in the house.
Yay!
And Katie, happy about one of the ugliest buildings in Winnipeg, at least being captured in the historical record. The public safety building, what I think you erroneously referred to as the Remand Center.
I think that somebody should shoot a movie using only Winnipeg brutalist architecture, like only those exteriors, and they think we'd live on some Borg planet or something.
I developed a theory when I worked right across from the street from the thing in one of the other truly ugly buildings in Winnipeg, City Hall and the administration building. And I said, well, of course they were all paranoid. Look at that thing. It's like arrow slits to see outside. Like it's just, it's out of the opening scene of Joe versus the Volcano. If you've ever seen that, it's like, that plotting and, that, it is. They make that beautiful Tyndall stone, which looks so wonderful, Jim, in the building you work in Manitoba legislature, is just the most oppressive and anyway.
My favorite thing is the public safety building. The cladding was coming off. They had to band it with metal bands so it wouldn't to make
someone.
The public safety building safe, they had to put on the I guess architectural equivalent of duct tape. And if the light hit it at a certain time of day, all you would see were the staples.
Yeah. The Civic Center Parkade, which is right next to it, as you walk in, off to the left, under there is one of the police's, what used to be the police's garage. Their shop and everything. Massive, and I've seen them, massive posts to support it, to make sure that when that thing came down, it didn't necessarily kill everyone under it, because that was falling apart.
Yeah.
My argument had always been the building, and folks, I will put a link to some local pictures of the public safety building, and you'll see why. I was like, the building's obviously trying to kill itself. Let it finish the job. Let's put it out of its misery. It's not even suicide, it's euthanasia. It wants to die. Let us just help it along. Why these extraordinary measures for even a building that knows it's like it's time to go? How did
like
Gordon
Marvin,
Tatusa's
Harper's
father? How did Gordon Tatu say? I will be going my way. I will be on the way soon. That's what the building was trying to do. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get back into it. And yes, folks, we are entering the spoiler zone. All right. Craft-wise, Jim, I am really impressed with this flick. How well they did. Given it was a low budget, you saw the 82 funders at the end. Given it was a low budget film, now some of that may be that it's Winnipeg and it was easy to find this stuff still around. It was 2001, 2002 when it was made, if memory serves. It came out in 2003. But really, the team, the art, it looked of a time.
Yeah.
And they were able to shoot around some of the stuff where it's like you can kind of see as a car drives quickly that it's like that building wasn't around then. But that they were able to still capture the sense of the time and the costumes and the look. And even, how Winnipeg in winter can have a kind of dirty feel to it, especially late in winter. Like, even, when they shot. It felt real all the way through. Yep. What about you?
Well, as somebody who lives in a winter city, or a city that has a great deal of winter, I'm often critical of movies like King Kong, Peter Jackson King Kong, when they're dealing with cold and you see no evidence of cold. When he takes Naomi Watts, up to the and no, you can't see their breath. It's December or what, like that kind of thing. But here, I mean, it felt it, it looked it, that time of year when it's
bitter
super cold.
March
They didn't quite have that. Yeah, and it wasn't quite that super deep where it affects your facial muscles and it sort of makes you talk a little funny. Not quite that cold, but it was still cold, and you could tell from the texture of the snow that there was still, maybe a month left of winter or something. It wasn't quite spring, and even there's a couple of overhead shots where they had and it wasn't that. Yeah, and that would be sort of right around that area where you get, the sun a little bit, and it does have a little bit of effect. But I got none of the sense that it was crafted snow. Like, it all seemed genuine. Yeah. The look of it was great. Everyone, they had
and
their,
if it was,
and it. Well, and the cars of the age too, the vintage cars, like the old police cars, combined with all the other stuff. There was one shot of a store called Millennium Pizza, which I don't know would have been around in '89, but 88, whatever.
But they figured, what the hell?
So it had a great, absolutely feel of winter. They totally nailed.
Yeah. Well, and even the homes, whether it be the home of Dowson's girlfriend.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like, that's a downtown working class apartment. That woman's going to work at Chicken Delight or something, a local fast food operation, or maybe she's a clerk in some company, but there's a working class woman. The police's homes were, they weren't palatial. It wasn't this kind of and it had a lived in feel, not dirty, but I imagine people lived there. Sometimes these homes, they can look like show homes, where if there's dirt or schmutz or mess, it looks like a staged mess. Like, oh, the kids just left. Am I baking bread? And it didn't have that here.
Yeah.
What did you think of what about the sounds of the film? What did you think? Like, I can't really say there was a soundtrack to speak of. I'm not saying they didn't have any, except when there is Indigenous drumming or chanting, praying. But otherwise, what did you think?
There was that thing that they kept on doing whenever Harry Wood, who's I guess was J.J. Harper's half brother, whenever he sort of thought about JJ, there was that sort of, that mystical flute music that came up. That was a little on the nose. I love that, and it have even been sort of like a non-Indigenous person's idea of like adding that in. I don't know that. I'm just suspecting, but that's about the only thing I would have had a problem with. I didn't really notice the score, and they say that's always the best for scores. If you don't notice it, they just sort of guide you along effortlessly. I mean, I sort of liked. Just trying to think if there was a lot of Aboriginal, like First Nations language in it, if they used it or not. I mean, they did have some indication of during the drumming and things. They actually had, it sort of reminded me of Caballero on SCTV. They obviously had a budget for a couple crane shots. One of them involved the big sign at Brook Inn, the cowboy, and so I could say, let's nail this crane shot. And another one was, and it wouldn't have been a drone at the time, I don't think, but it was an overhead shot of the drumming, which was super cool. But yeah, so that was kind of cool. and used appropriately, like in times of ceremony and things like that.
Yeah, I can speak to that because by then I was crew on about 5 of similar class movies, maybe a bit higher budget, but yeah, Winnipeg crews are very familiar with how to work a scissor lift, or those Zoom booms. Like some of that construction technology has become so cheap and ubiquitous that it not the big deal it was when poor John Candy, I mean Johnny LaRue, was out on a crane shot. What about the performances? Was there what about the performances?
I thought Adam Beach is J.J. Harper, as I said. He actually, for such a he's playing a bit of a like a guy he's not exactly a spring chicken anymore, J.J. Harper, and he's he's sort of
he's in his 30s.
He's late 30s, but yeah,
no, 36, and
was he?
Adam was 30 by then. I looked it up.
Oh, was he? Okay,
not that far apart. I mean, they obviously had.
But he's sort of a
hey, don't get. Feel free to have a little pudge on you, Adam.
Yeah. But he's playing a bit of a frumpier guy than he normally is. But I thought he he had the glass, the goofy '80s glasses, which I was a victim of as well. But
as was I.
Yes,
wasn't always this cool, folks.
So he was great in his limited time on screen. Even Gordon Tutusis, he was, who's right over here. No, here, there he is. You can see his face on the screen. The late Gordon Tutusis. He had a part that would normally be like the sort of the humorless spiritual father, but he actually was kind of funny, and he made a few cracks, and he was serious, and he had sort of he had a very sort of poetic personality. But I quite enjoyed him. Eric Schweig, like I said, he had enough to fulfill that main character role. And the cops were all, they were a little bit sort of mustache twirly, but I thought I always get his name mixed up. Is it Curry Graham Curry Graham? I always want to call him Graham Curry, but he's great. Like, I've always seen him, and you always know that this guy's on the edge whenever you see him come on the screen. He's in a lot of Canadian shows. You think, this guy's gonna lose it, but he was perfect as Cross, who from any accounts, I've never heard anything about him being like the most stable guy in the world. So you wonder how he got past HR. But and like I said, the rest of the cops are like, maybe Gary Chalk as Dowson didn't dive, maybe you didn't see that sort of like, I guess I better commit suicide. You didn't see those sort of snap off in his head necessarily. But up until then, I sort of like, he was just. It's not that he was evil. It's just that he was not good. He wasn't committed and lazy.
Protect like he said, service.
They said, how many people have touched the gun? He goes, should I still get it printed? Nah, don't bother. What are you kidding?
No, they did print it. That's it. It's like, just get it out of my face.
Yeah.
But he was like, he arrived and he's like, this is a mess already. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I have sympathy for, and now we're moving into story. So you're done on craft.
So I'll go back to,
no, you're not. Okay. Back to performance.
I'll just go back to but I want to say that, and I have it right here, the one who played Joe, who was sort of Harry Wood's second and right-hand man or whatever, is an actor named Michael Lorenchuk, and I believe he's also from Manitoba. He was great as a limited role. He was the guy who was telling a story. He was sort of slouched down on the couch with a cigarette, and he was supernatural. And I bought everything he said. Like he didn't seem like an actor's working. He was just, I bought everything that he's, it was good roles.
Hello?
So, how about you? I'm still here? Am I?
Yes, you are. Yeah, you dropped out, but you're back.
Okay.
But you're back. For myself, as far as the key players, the key players, I do think they did a great job. And in the next part, we'll get into Ken Dowson as a character afterwards. There were times, I think if I hadn't done my research though, Jim, I would have thought, well, some of these cops are just caricatures. Did my research. In the inquiry, so for folks who are unaware, at the end of this, there was this massive inquiry, and we only saw a little window of it, and rightly so. Again, back to my quick review, that's a shout out to the film. But for folks, and there is a link to the whole inquiry. It actually connects first to the table of contents of the J.J. Harper shooting and that portion that they did. And then they talked about Helly Betty Osborne. And then they went, here's the Indigenous experience there, or at the time, Aboriginal experience with the justice system. And there was, as part of the reporting afterwards, they were there were experts in. One guy who was hired he specialized in helping people, helping organizations be less racist. And just how vocal recruits were, how angry they were that there'd be any natives allowed in, because if there was a native allowed in, like really a native allowed into the service, the only way that they could have gotten in is through special circumstances, which means they'd put their lives on the line with a weak cop. That was like the prevalent and loudly stated opinion of recruits. It was endemic in the whole operation. Now, that said, it is the late 80s. The things were changing. But what I'm really trying to say is people I might have thought were caricatures. You know what? No. I was very fortunate to work with a lot of Winnipeg Police Service members. Although, more things change, the more they stay the same. But I met my share of, well, aren't you from the 1950s? Jesus Christ. Yeah. And so, yeah, they're not caricatures. And I was like, oh, it's pretty good. I think you do kind of see where you're dealing with some actors that are, and some of it's tougher for me. I'm like, I worked with that person, actually. I hired that person for a thing. When I was in film. So it's like it's harder to buy them when you know them that way.
Yeah.
That said, yeah, I think they really did make the best of the materials they had. Cast, art department, everything. They spent where they needed to spend. They worked where they needed to work, and they kept the story lean enough that none of these things would bite them, or if they got bit in the butt, it was a nip, not a big chunk taken out of them. So, yeah, I think it's a testament to what you can do on a small budget with a lot of people. Like, this isn't, okay, we'll make it in a submarine. There's only 5 characters. It's a lot of people, and they wanted to make sure they captured that. So I think what they did with what they had, they really used their resources well. Great resource management. I hope it was union resource management, but I don't know. All right. The story. You wanna kick it off there, Jim? Actually, you know what? Before we get to that, I'm sorry. Why don't we take I really do mean this about the public safety building. I am so not a fan of brutalist architecture That said, there are fans of Winnipeg. Actually has a pretty good stock of this architectural style. And it was all built at the same time, and not all of it, like the public safety building, was just crumbling, from terrible decisions made when it was built. Katie Fowler says, loved seeing the public safety building again. She also has got the crossed eyes of, let it die. But I did want to, for folks who do like Brutus architecture, yeah, we've got a fair bit of it. But is there anyone else in the chat who wanted to comment about the craft of it, the art? Did it, Richard? You're not that much younger than us. Did any of this? Did it ring true to you? Did the look and feel of the film ring as true to you as it did to Jim and I? I'd love to hear that. I should say one of the small quibbles that I have, and this is more form of a TV movie at the time, is they have those fade outs where they obviously go to commercial and then they come back, and it's this certain thing. It happens about 3 times that I noticed during the movie, and it sort of fades out for a commercial and then it fades back in, post commercial. There's nothing you can do about that. It was probably a requirement at the time, but it's that's more the mastering, turning it into a movie. Which is why, the Union Bugs may just not have made the end of the film, right?
Yeah.
Katie is assuring us all that she was kidding about
too late
the
now.
public safety building. Well, no. Yeah, like I said, if you look at it, it's got that crossed-eyed laughing thing. Like, let that ugly eyesore die. Okay, Richard comments here. Yes, rang true, and I remember following developments as a kid. And I think that's the perfect time, Jim, to move into story, if that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, kick it off, Jim. What did you think of the story?
Yeah, I mean, the way it started, you probably have to ask yourself how to, going into this, you have to ask yourself, how are we going to handle this? The character in the subtitle of the film is dead. Do we want to, play him before? Do we want to, is it a biopic? It's not a biopic. It's a very focused look at this incident and how it affected a number of people and ultimately claimed a number of people as well, not just J.J. Harper. But so I think the way that they did it, and as I said before, it's almost an inverted suspense movie. Like, it starts off with that sort of that horrible feeling of inevitability where you know what's going to happen. And I really think if you watch that first 15 minutes, which covers the shooting itself, it's really well staged. And I think it's probably a lot more complicated than I can even appreciate, because you have this, a couple kids knocking on, stealing beer from a liquor commission or a hotel liquor store. And you have JJ, walking home himself. And the whole thing, the brother getting sort of some bad vibes.
I think they had bought the beer. They had stolen the car.
Oh, was that what it? Okay. Oh, that's right, because they just crashed it.
They're car thieves, which is why the kid was like, "I want my beer back."
Oh, that's right, because the guy who was running after them, it would have been his car then. That he was. Yeah, I just thought they were.
That's all we ever saw. They stole a car. That's what they were being chased down for.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, but the other guy went in to get beer. They already had their beer. And
some of the other things too, like the witnesses, like when the one policeman runs across Logan, and the 3 kids in the red car stop, and all these sort of things are converging, and it reminded me of the best of those movies where all these things are happening at once. And even there's a car accident in there, like the car hits a pole and the kids sort of go in different directions, and eventually it leads Robert Cross to come across J.J. Harper right out, basically right outside Stanley Knowles Park there, right on Logan. And there's all these things just for a few minutes, all these sort of balls in the air, and everything's converging. and it speaks to the fate of this. You know, if JJ was 5 minutes late or 5 minutes earlier, and I thought that was a really good start to the movie. And then you know, then comes this sort of slow boiling outrage as they, you know, as the people that are looking for justice get blocked their return, and the first judge says, "Oh, I don't find that report of the gun believable," and that kind of thing, and so it's sort of, it's this weird inverted model, and
even though the way they pulled it out in the film was great, it's like so laughably edited. Well, the way they did it, then you made a statement, the police wrote it down, and then perhaps rewrote it.
Yeah.
But the kid going in that key scene in the inquest, it's not the way I talk.
I wouldn't have said that.
That was chef's kiss.
And he was kind of like this about it. He was like, "What?" Just nice bit of attitude there too, you know. That
was a standout from a young actor.
Yeah,
you know, a standout little moment he delivered there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And just the, you know, and the other little sort of seeds of outrage that are planted, like that one witness, I think his name was Mike Timchuk, and he said, "Yeah, I phoned in and they said they didn't need," and then he's watching in the bar. I don't know who.
Yeah.
In movies, you always have people watching the news in a bar. But anyway, so he's watching the news in the bar. He goes, "Hold on, I'm going to get involved now." And so then you see him in the chair, and that was kind of neat.
But I think it's too. That I was, the bar part. You're absolutely right. But I do buy the, well, I called them and they didn't call me back. I am now righteously indignant.
Yes.
It just happened to be this time the white guy was like, "I'm righteously indignant, and indirectly justice will be done because of my righteous indignation."
Yeah.
I'm pissed I didn't get the right service.
Exactly. May I speak to
those guys?
Police forces manager? But so from that starting kind of, I don't want to call it a seed because it's too big for a seed, but from that starting incident, then you're setting up the rest of the story, and you know, having all these other people, the witnesses and the people that are advocating for J.J. Harper, and then the police protecting themselves, and the Weasley chief of police that doesn't really seem very interested in his job, and everything else, and they all come together, and you know, they sort of lead you to the conclusion. So I thought that was a nice set of decisions. It could have been, you know, if it was handled differently, I don't think it would have the same momentum. It wouldn't have the same crisp 88-minute delivery, and they fit a lot into that 88 minutes. And I thought it was very well done.
It was super clean, I thought.
Yeah.
You really did have four distinct parts. First act, like right up to that's where the action hinges, because the police have exonerated themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, literally after, well, do you believe him? Well, hey, he's one of ours. Mm. Everything's fine. To inquest, where all of a sudden we know just how bad it is. And to the turn, which is we got the inquiry, and then Timchuk is the first one. That first moment where that's where all of a sudden everything starts to go against the police, because you got somebody, a white guy, who is actually saying the same thing that they all had their guns out, the Cowboys and Indians of the title. They all had their guns out, and which calls into question Cross's narrative. And that's where the movie turns, and then it's all just downhill. It really is just a great, you have the climax of the police winning and the denouement of, you know, it is poetic, and then it's who wins. There's 2 people dead, 3, another, it's only another ultimately 8 years later that we read about in the newspaper that Cross had died of a just died in his sleep, didn't he? Like, it was, he'd end up moving down to the States and just had a wreck of a life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought that was so well done. And yes, at no, you're right, Jim. The moments of who knows how that decision was made. I thought it was on the nose as well. That kind of flute, that wind instrument.
Yeah.
That said, the ending didn't feel triumphal or like it was handled well. It had a poignancy to it, a bittersweetness. Yes, and it was something that the Wood said, "Hey, it sucked. Yeah, if they both had to die for justice, for you to listen to us, well, then it was worth it." But he wasn't dancing on the guy's grave. And I think that was a great choice by the filmmakers. When I looked into it, it's like, wow, there's like 18 people involved in writing this. But in part, I could kind of see why. They wanted to make sure the book is very reporterly. Here's when I learned this. Here's when I learned that. Here's the backstory on these people. And they're trying to make a movie. But that committee did a good job. It was a solid story.
It's funny. I don't think, did they mention the judges? They said who did they say? They said when Dowson was starting to fret about the inquest, they said there's one First Nations guy and another bleeding heart. That's for the two judges involved, and I suspect one was Murray Sinclair, wasn't he?
Well,
I just didn't know who the other one
played
was.
him, and I cannot believe it was. You know what? I have the inquiry. Just a sec.
Okay.
I can tell you exactly. Yeah, it was Sinclair, and who you can still see around town.
Yes.
Last time I actually broke bread with other people a couple of years ago, it was in the table. Him and his wife were in the table behind us.
Oh, you're kidding.
I think it was his spouse. Could have been his sister or something. I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay, so. Okay, the Associate Chief Justice Elvin Hamilton was the white guy. And then Judge Murray Sinclair, Associate Chief Judge of the Provincial Court, was Murray Sinclair. And it was played by, and I am ashamed that I cannot, I'm a little embarrassed because I actually used to hang out with this guy a little bit back when I was in film. We tried to put a couple of things together. Nothing ever came of it because I really didn't know what I was doing. And I wasn't able to bullshit all the way through to something actually happening. But he played Murray Sinclair.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a great job. Bad wig, great job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And wigs are, for those of you who don't know, being able to do a good wig for film is a remarkable feat. Like, it's something I am not telling. I don't think I'm telling. Well, you know what? I'm not going to mention the movie, but I do remember one movie where they were so disappointed with what they could get locally, they flew a guy in. They had a wig guy. They flew him in from L.A.
Wig guy. That's hilarious. Speaking of which, I was in. Maybe this is a time to throw up. I took a couple pictures today. I was off getting my my shot, and I went by Stanley Knowles Park, which is where J.J. Harper was murdered, and I was walking around there, actually chasing some birds. I got, I actually, there we go. That's today, and that's from the movie. If it occurred near that sign, that's the spot. That's the spot where the murder went down. But there was a wig in the park, just lying on the grass, and it was kind of a little bit shocking. But
you can see a pergola there. My grandmother, on my mother's side, my mother, when they moved from England to Winnipeg in the 50s, lived on Alexander, which runs parallel to Logan. I
Okay.
used to play in that park when we went and visited my grandmother.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not
It's a
kidding
nice
at all.
little it's not, it needs some landscaping and stuff, but it's a nice little, it's probably a couple acres. It's a nice little wild bit. There's a sort of a hidden parking lot at the end, like sort of in and around. And I saw there was a cop car right there as I jaywalked and performed illegal U-turns to park to get a few pictures. But anyhow, so that was one of them. Yeah, no, but
Did you want me to put up the other snap you took?
yeah, sure. That was kind of a cool one there was the sign that they made good use of. And the Westbrook Inn has another sign, and it says the home of Aboriginal music. So I guess it's a little bit of a meeting place for that. Probably pretty quiet during COVID times, but yeah, it was kind of neat to see. I don't go down Logan often, so it had quite it was a bit of a point in some of the shots, like a kind of a distinctive landmark. So it was kind of neat to see in real life. But yeah, there's a couple of things, just getting back to the story here, where Dowson he literally says, we won the inquest, at the start. And that was kind of a telltale. I don't know, inquests are things that you win or not, but it seemed to be the wrong approach for him to take. But in terms of other aspects of the story, and when you were talking about the Bechdel test, a lot of the women are excised from the movie. J.J. Harper's wife is not seen, and neither is Dowson's family. Instead, you see his mistress. Now, I'm not sure if did he have a First Nations mistress?
He did. Oh, yeah.
Oh, he
that
did,
woman
eh?
is real. And
Wow.
was mentioned a lot in Gordon Sinclair's book.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's not made up. Like,
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah.
Dowson was a conflicted man.
Man. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
That's interesting.
That woman
Yeah, 'cause
existed. She may still be alive. I shouldn't say
This is
existed. She did more than exist, but she is a real person.
Yeah.
He did have an Indigenous girlfriend. Yeah. And his made cynical jokes about cops before, but it was like oh, and of course he's with his girlfriend. He could be with his wife. She's even saying, "Oh, are you going to go home to your wife and check on your kids?" It's like, how are they doing? It's like,
yeah, just a sweetheart, just thoughtful.
Only a cop would have such a, without any irony, without any sense of, I might be full of crap here.
Yeah. And didn't he say to her something fairly offensive, like, "Oh, was that just another dead Indian line or something?" I'm quoting here. He said something to her sort of 3/4 of the way through the movie, and she sort of pushed back a little bit, said, because they were watching TV, and she said, I wanted to see that.
What is this? He was about they were going to be the victims here.
Yeah,
and I think that was the. Who was bleeding out? Who bled to death on the side of the road?
Well, that's it. And I went online after I watched this movie at sort of all out, 3 a.m, and I thought, I got to get to bed. But I want to check it's one of those things that you can endlessly check out. So the one article that they were, the magazine, that magazine article that they were carrying disgustedly through the police station, that was Don Gilmore,
Saturday,
who had written the shooting of J.J. Harper. Saturday Night Magazine. I'd love to read that. I've actually written for Saturday Night Magazine, but just little tiny funny pieces. So, so that was something to check out.
Don Gilmore. Wow, there's a name.
Stuff, and I actually, yeah. Well, he's a novelist now. But the other thing that I checked out was, I think it was Manitoba Historical Society or something. And I think the line that I picked out was, Robert Cross never recovered from the J.J. Harper shooting. And I thought to myself, well, I know another person who never recovered from that shooting. It wasn't Cross. So, it's pretty odd ways to put things, I think.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
what did you think of the use of Grandpa Harper there talking about forgiveness? I can't 100% can't quite remember if that was part of what we were hearing at the time. Like, it was the story for, especially come the inquiry, because it only happened a couple of years before. The inquest was happening in 1990. I do remember when we all learned, oh, the cop had 2 sets of notes. What a fortuitous turn of events. And all his weaselly answers of why, no one told me. I just magically learned these things on my own. Not that I think we thought it was going well for the police by then, but that was a moment, that was like a big, what the?
Yeah.
They're all liars.
Jonas Chernick, by the way.
Yes, no, Mr. Chernick. What is, getting back to my question, what did you think of the use of that Cross, as he was consumed by, his own demons and mental health issues, and, no one comes out of a shooting going, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's for breakfast? Unless they're a sociopath. What did you think of that use of the Wendigo idea? I
loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I'm sorry I didn't mention it before, but it was just another element, and it's I don't think it's a bullshit element to introduce these sort of what we would consider supernatural origins or supernatural ideas into it. It happens to be the way that certain characters in this looked at the world. I thought it was fantastic. It added a whole other element. It added elements of fate and sort of other stuff going on, and I thought it was really fascinating. I'm glad they didn't push it too much. Could they have done more with it? I didn't want to see any dream sequences or anything where, he became a monster, or, whatever form it would take.
Yeah, we're not watching a Stephen King.
Yeah, no. But I thought
adaptation.
I thought it was just, enough to sort of to kind of explain some stuff that was going on, that an explanation that you or I might not sort of immediately recognize. I thought it was great. I totally added to the movie for me.
Yeah. I loved it. I loved it myself too. By the end of it, I'm like, yeah, that's the inevitability of his demise. But when you see a tragic character, and Cross is a tragic character.
Oh yeah,
he is, consumed by a terrible decision to shake down somebody because he's amped up. But what it did with Harper's dad's talking about, forgiveness, and I want to talk to him and I want to forgive him because, having a character who is worried about Cross's, maybe not his well-being, but his soul, his very nature, that there is this, and it makes it all the more poignant and tragic when Cross dies in the ignominious way he did, was that the people he harmed, because you're not just, yes, mostly it's the man who bled to death in the, in the boulevard there.
Yeah.
But also the other people that were hurt by this, that coming from that, saying, you can have forgiveness if you just showed up at the funeral, if you just, and the way that demon, and it's just, what a great like I thought it was wonderful to see it, wonderful to hint at it, because when we think of the Wendigo, we're almost always put in this model of, oh, that's the boogeyman of the local Indian. You know, it's you know, this horror story and everything. I'm not saying that it can't take on those aspects, but I love the idea, and I would love to see you know, more like Indigenous filmmakers kind of not exploring it. I'm sure they are. I'd just love to see it where it's something where it's like, okay, this is a kind of a way to explore Indigenous culture, especially in our own local environment. That, yeah, I thought that was great, and I thought that the, you know, that it also showed what Harry Wood was struggling with, you know, his own, you know, am I going to be angry? I've got to have enough righteous anger to get something done, but I can't be consumed by it by myself. You know, I can't be consumed myself, you know?
Yeah.
And even, I mean, Tutusis was great. He delivered a great little moment in the third act when they were getting the pipe. Or so let's say, let's say 2B, the second act, halfway through, past the halfway point, but we're still in the second act, where everything's starting to turn the right way, and these like, well, used to cut off their head, and you know, to get the evil out. Well, can't do that anymore. And they have a little moment of humor, that dry, that kind of dry, subtle. It's not the, you know, your typical stand-up comic loud, North American loud. Oh, I made a joke. Now you laugh. More just that like dry delivery. Yeah. No, I was impressed. Why don't let's take a look at what we got going on in the chat before we move on the meaning. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one I wanted to bring up. Richard L. says, I was impressed with the way the film's story was suspenseful and interesting throughout. Was well done. I agree with Richard. I was really impressed with the way we all know how it's going to turn out, especially if you're a Winnipegger.
Yeah.
And from the get-go, it's like, you're going to die, and then this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, all this racist crap. But they were able to always seat us as the audience in the moment, seeing it if you're Indigenous, seeing it as Robert Cross is falling apart, even seeing the police trying to keep it together and there he is. He's got racist idiots making fun of it. He's got other guys who are like bothered by what they've done because they read the paper too, and they're not all caricatures out of the 50s or the 1850s. They're not all like that. Like but meanwhile, they're part of a paramilitary organization that's really big on loyalty. So you get these nasty pieces of work. I even think one of the characters, the real jerk cop, there was like an exceptional. I'm like, because Butch Eakin, a notorious Winnipeg police officer who, maybe he did some nice things, but the police service tried for a long time to get rid of him, finally got rid of, because they finally caught him on camera beating someone up, but had a terrible history of this. He was there, and I'm thinking, that's the Butch Eakin character, where it's all just that nasty, the threats, you don't want to harass us. You know, and it's, but I suspect they're like, well, you know, Butch Eakin still, fighting to keep his job at the time, I think, if memory serves. And it's like, well, we don't need to get sued. We'll just have a generic asshole. But what Richard says here is, we've got this tension building because we're the three characters that we're following keep us in their moment. And that's everything working right. So, I couldn't agree with Richard. And to my thinking, that's why it had suspense, is because, we're forever kept in the moment as they're getting depressed. We get to know these three characters enough that we that they're all, well, they breathe again in 88 minutes. What the hell, eh?
Yeah. No, it's super nicely done. Yeah, very, very well done. Very deftly handled.
Yeah. Walt, Vlad65 says, using that supernatural element has to be done carefully. Didn't work for me in The Terror. I felt it undercut the legitimate story. Yeah, you have to look. It was more metaphor and a way of, not even, I wouldn't say metaphor. It's not really a supernatural element. They weren't saying it's supernatural. More, they were much like, I got to be careful here.
Yeah.
We weren't seeing, and there's the Wendigo goes into his body or something. It's not, It's not like that. It's more think of it as more of a worldview. And they're using Wendigo as part of the worldview of this is the way the world works, and that's what's happening to him. And it gives us a way of looking at the character. Like, we have these little moments where it's like we might actually be seeing it through an Indigenous elder's eyes. Because it was super important to that character to, make peace, because otherwise we're going to have evil in the world. And
it's offering up an alternative way to look at things. And as Schmidt says on The New Girl, they're not wrong.
Yes.
Like they called it. They saw a poisoned man, and he ultimately, they could sort of tell that he wasn't long for this world. If he didn't
do something to make his spirit right with it, make his heart right with this, No. So, Vlad, I see you were saying it could be used in other films. That's what I was referring to. Je comprends. Okay, well, let's keep moving here. We've got, wait a sec. We also, another comment. We'll take one more comment before we
go ahead, caller.
Like I'm doing everyone a favor or something here. Richard L. Glad you mentioned the dry, humorous dialogue. In my experience, it very much reflected the humorous way local Indigenous people relate. Yeah. What did you think, Jim?
Yeah, I was, and I'm thinking back. They were, the First Nations people aren't always well represented on screen, and I'm just thinking of all the, the more I'm thinking about it, the mistress seemed like a decent woman, despite your views on infidelity. The grandfather was sort of the father was doing sort of a fatherly thing, but a little bit different. And even the kids, the witness kids, these people all had, they weren't just they weren't criminals. They weren't, they had lives. They had agency.
Well, the one kid who doesn't talk like that was.
Yeah, but I was reminded of, and I sort of wonder if this played into the story too. If Cross was pissed because he fell down and looked foolish, he had his gun out. And when they're talking to the kid, he said, well, how do you know he had a gun? Well, he said he wiped out. And they go, what? He fell down? He goes, yeah, major. And that was a nice, the use of the word major there is very, very 80s. But
very
yeah.
80s young, close to that kid's age at the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
88, I would have been 21.
But I think that there's some really good roles for First Nations actors in this. What was the initial question? Sorry, I think I got lost in the.
No, we're just gonna move on.
I lost the plot.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the meaning.
Sure.
Do you want to start, Jim? What do you think? What's the main theme of this? Other than, hey.
Can't we all get along?
Shoot the citizenry.
Yeah. And I do think it has to, Harry Wood was a a well-drawn character. I was reading some old Free Press articles earlier today, and one of them said that Harry Wood, he might have existed, but he was also a composite, for the purposes of this sort of a composite character. And that's why I thought the mistress may be false if they're going to use composite characters in this. Not my favorite thing to do. I can sort of understand why people do it sometimes, but anytime I hear composite, nothing good, composite drawing, composite character, nothing good ever comes from that kind of composite. But anyway,
hey, there's the AGI then, 1,000 pages.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. What do you mean? 17-part miniseries. His motivation, right? It was that he was troubled. He was having, I think there was mention of PTSD, unless I read that later, like some form of everyone was shocked after the fact. So Harry was struggling with, feelings of guilt because, and feelings of, because he saw it coming, right? He was, how should he process that? What should they do about it? Like that sort of, that powerlessness that comes along with being in a situation such as that. And his solution, I think, was to attempt at least to get, it came across as threatening before, but hey, Robert Cross, my father wants to speak to you. And so I think that was ultimately his way of doing it. There's another scene when he's accosted by a drunk in the street and hey buddy, read the room. This guy does not want to be bugged.
Recognize me.
Yeah. And so they have an encounter, and it's violent ultimately, not as violent, but he basically throws him down on the ground. He doesn't want any part of this guy.
He's grabbed by the arm, and then he shoves him down, much like the narrative from Cross.
Yes, yeah.
I grabbed him by the arm and he shoved me down.
That was an interesting sort of a little mirror there, and then he sort of walks a few steps and he thought, I can't let this part of my life get to me, or I'm not going to be that guy. And he walks back, picks the guy up, brushes him off, and
it can be both, can't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. But I thought that was important. It was a slight scene. It was 90 seconds long. It was sort of like just plopped in the sort of between the second and third act, I think. And but I think it was important. It was an insight into how he wanted to proceed with the rest of his life. Is this going to make him angry and bitter, or should he? Because he seems to be a pretty good guy, the way they portray him. Should I keep on being that good guy, that sort of brotherly, that force for good, or should, is this gonna claim me as well? So there's a little bit of that, and I think it's, I think the meaning has to do with how you proceed. There's ways to deal with situations like this. The way that Cross and Dowson did, and the way that Harry did, and looking for healing properly, I think is probably part of the big part of this. The meaning of this.
To think about healing, reconciliation.
Yes, yeah.
I'm wondering. I think the if there was a big theme, like the overarching one, was, and it was stated when Dowson has committed suicide, and when Harry pushes back on the media saying, "You think I'm here? I'm happy about this." Now there's 2 people dead because of this, but if it means we're going to be listened to, going back to that scene, what did the homeless guy want? To be recognized.
Yeah.
I thought that moment was a little contrived. That said. It still worked, and I think it's the hint of theme, but at the end it's like, oh, when are you guys, if they had to die so that we can be listened to, then so be it. Then that's the cost, that's the price we have to pay to be listened to. And I think that's one of the main themes, and it was even in a great little scene where they're basically putting the squeeze on Elijah Harper saying, listen, and it was like, The government fell a year later. Richard might be able to help us out with this. At the time, folks, for those of you who don't know, Winnipeg, Manitoba, the legislature, the premier, which is kind of it's more of a prime minister of a state. There's a better way to look at it. We keep referring it to as a governor, but that is not really the thing. They're more like a prime minister just of one state. You have one legislature, they're all MLAs, whatever party gets the most, their leader becomes premier, and they get to run the show. The New Democratic Party, kind of a social democratic center-left operation up here in Canada. The Social Democratic or Democratic Socialist, I would argue it's a Social Democratic Party. That said, they were very lean at the time, and yes, need every seat. And so I totally bought that bit of politicking, saying, you're going to need us again. We gave you 4 seats, and when 1 or 2 seats can, win or lose you an election. And if memory serves, they did win and then lost a year later because the government fell. It was too thin, and then there was. But Richard be able to say
Jim
that.
Walding,
but it was a nice bit. It was a nice bit of politicking. But it comes back to that. I think another thing, and it's too bad it wasn't explored more, was what we were really seeing is growing Indigenous. I'm not going to say activism, but almost like realpolitik. They were just so much more organized, focused, knew what they wanted, and were willing to work together to get that I think it's all about, at least for the film, about being heard. Another theme I think could have been developed further would be one of, I love the way you always put it, Jim. Read a room. The way the police could not read the room, even at the time. Herb Stevens, and it's in Herb Stevens, the chief of police at the time, just was, no, we're fine, stand on a record. There is no reason why anyone would have to investigate one of our members other than us. Just want to quickly say hello to our man from Chennai, Shashank.
Woohoo!
Who apparently has a term exam coming up, so he's got to go back
healthy
to school.
There, Shashank?
Are you staying healthy, Shashank?
Well, he'll
you're
check us
studying
out
for a
later.
term exam.
He'll do his real homework. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I think it's too bad they didn't explore that as much. The police's and it's not stated like the main theme is, but I think there's a bit of a theme of the way the police just kind of, they weren't the professionals they thought they were. Mm-hmm. And this kind of showed it, and how they were really focused on protecting themselves. Cross goes into like that's their whole, in the end, their whole MO. Protect the service. Mm-hmm. Protect the department. And on a slight political sidebar, they did not learn that lesson because, 15 years later, that poor woman Tamman gets killed by a Winnipeg police officer. And what did the Winnipeg police do? And what did we find out in the Tamman inquiry 3 years later was, we got to protect the service. I mean, I'm not saying that, like it is, that their inability to read a room, to see themselves as being in a conflict of interest, just stubborn that way, while at the same time their own worst enemies, like, you got to change your words there, like somebody's gonna tell the truth, half truth,
endless massaging, just the, and he was a real,
we won the
won the inquest.
We won the inquest.
Well, here's I'll read some Herb Steven lines that were attributed to him. Dowson, one of our best investigators. Yeah, the guy that missed the eyeglasses in the snow. Our uniquely moral services. his deft management. There's just like not even see ya. I'm on my way to Miami or wherever he was going.
I'm actually gonna Albuquerque.
Well, yeah, Albuquerque. Yeah,
but even that was like you're getting out of town while it's all happening.
Yeah,
in the end, they had Herb on the stand. Herb had his time in the hot seat. I do think, though, I'm going to defend Dowson a little bit. I don't think you saw a fail. It's not that he was a bad investigator. It's they didn't have a procedure. They didn't have a plan, and they didn't care. Like, they got there. Everyone's walking through by the time he's there, it's irrecoverable. Mm-hmm. And then their identity unit did come out. But things we didn't see in the movie that actually did happen. First meeting, it wasn't just him alone, alone with a cop making a statement. His union rep was there. Like the union president was there. Even Hodgson, who should have taken control of the situation, Cross's partner, who was actually senior to him, she was supposed to, that's the first investigatory failure. He was too busy taking care of Cross to kind of go, we now have a crime scene. We have to secure it. We have to do these things. So the identity unit comes out when you got the fire department about to hose everything down you. And he shows up as the duty inspector going, I've got to protect the department. And I think that's what we're really seeing. Okay. And you even saw it in the Taman inquiry, where it's, I don't know if you remember Rob Gerard, but his older brother, Jim, a guy I grew up with, a grade higher than that crowd. Yeah. His brother was working for the professional standards unit at the time, and he got roasted over the coals during the Taman inquiry. But part of it was acknowledged. It was like, well, his mandate is to protect the service, he's not there to find out what happened. He's there to find out what happened as it relates to the reputation of the Winnipeg police service. It's like, how can you have somebody properly investigate something when half the time he's like, I got to make sure that, the service looks okay. Yeah. And this is something, another awful thing that could have been explored a bit better, stated a little more thematically, was, they're like, well, get him out of there. Like when he's in the psychiatric unit. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that actually happened.
Brings the gun in the paper bag.
Here's a guy in crisis, mental health crisis. And what do you mean get him out of there? And this is where I'm going to give I have an iota of doubt. Maybe Dowson really did. It wasn't a slow slide into madness, but one of the problems for police culture is it's super macho, show nothing. They've got it's interesting. If you factored in death through suicide, then it is a really dangerous job. Like, it's not dangerous. There's more dangerous gigs out there, a lot more. But the mental health issues and the and suicide is the big killer, And part of it is because you're supposed to suck it up. Just stop drinking. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, no kind of, although at the time, and it came out in the inquest, Cross there was a crisis counselor there. Probably from the old crisis reporting, which is now a discredited way of dealing with trauma immediately after the fact. Interestingly enough, folks, this is something that's been well demonstrated. There's no scientific evidence that these crisis support workers ever did anything good, and they may actually make it worse. And it's always better to kind of let people process it on their own time. And then if they're still having trouble, say, hey, we do have these services. If you're still, but give them some time. you know, notice traumatic events in her own past. You know, it's like, a lot of times you can shake it off. Telling someone to shake it off or telling someone to talk about it or just don't do that, especially with these assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Take up a
so
hobby.
now I'm going to give the Dowson character, maybe he was just like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is all going to be blamed on me. The suicide letter was such shameless. What are you, a Roman falling on your sword for the good of Rome?
Yeah,
It's
it
like
was pretty self
But
pitying.
again,
And
I'll be that. It's like, well, yeah, you were going to be that, and you weren't willing to face it. That was the thing. Another thing that the movie did a pretty good job, but I think could have done an even better job of how the police just forever, they were the evasive ones. Like in the inquiry, it's like, yeah, we believe all the natives who came up. Their testimony hung together. Even under cross-examination, they're reporting, you know, as best as they could what they saw. The weasel answers, the evasions, no one would tell me to change my answers. I just magically, it's like, you know.
As he locks eyes with his superior across the courtroom. Oh, yeah.
And even he was solid. What are you fucking gang?
Yeah.
You know, is he going to be solid on the stand?
Yeah,
exactly. Gangs worry about that. Mobsters worry about that. And the Winnipeg Police Department at the time worried about that.
And this is also the start of a time, I think, where they had, on the other end of things, they had a prosecutor who was, wrongfully imprisoning probably
Judge
about
Dangerfield.
Who
was involved in this?
4 or 5 people that the taxpayer ultimately has to pay for because of his incompetence,
and could be a lot more.
Yes, yeah,
like a lot more. Yeah, you played fast and loose, too tight with the police.
Yeah,
police would say, "No, we got the right guy. All right, let's make that fit."
Yeah, exactly.
Richard L. says, going back to some of the politics stuff, Jim, Elijah Harper was elected in 81, then re-elected in 86. The events shown in the film would have been before the government fell in February 88. So they must have announced the inquiry before it fell, or was it the Tories who actually put it up to make perhaps to make the NDP look bad? I don't see that. Yeah. This would have also been before Elijah Harper became a local hero and known nationally for his role in blocking the Leech Lake Court. Yes.
Of which there is another made-for-TV movie. So you could actually piece together certain parts of Winnipeg history by watching made-for-TV movies, I think.
And there's a movie that it'd like to bring, that Helen Betty Osborne.
Yes.
Other half, the other horrific half of this, of the impetus for this inquiry.
Which was, for the people that don't know, was a death of a young woman up north in was it the Paw? And she was basically,
Continued, Jim. Sorry, I just wanted to.
And she was murdered by a group of local and
white boys,
bad guys. White boys, and I think she was raped and murdered, and a lot of people in the town knew who did it, and the guy wasn't touched for years.
Well, let's hang tough on that, because we should watch the movie.
Yes,
I've read that part of the inquiry as well.
No,
I'm ready to correct as required.
Okay.
I'm all keen on it.
Oh yes, yeah. This makes me, and I should say, I've wanted to read Cowboys and Indians for years, just like Paris 1919. There's a whole stack. I've actually had it in my hands. I might have it in this house. I can't find it, and I had to read the book itself for years. And
it's a pretty light,
this is sort of giving.
quick
I
read.
even want to read the David Gilmour's. Yeah.
But it's a pretty quick, light read.
It's definitely
it's almost like
David
David
interest.
Cross was that Furman, LAPD. He does a thing outside that kind of, well, how are you not a racist asshole? It's just gallows humor. It's like, Sure, buddy.
Oh yeah. I don't see it as racist. I see it. That was very illuminating there too. But you know, and
Okay.
you mentioned Crystal Tam, and the guy. The guy that they got for that, Derek Harvey's Inc., reminded me a lot of Cross, like that sort of flaky guy who couldn't hold his drink. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, but I think that's part of what kills these guys. What gets them into trouble is you can't hold your drink. So you can't question anyone on it because you can't hold it. When it's like, oh, who's holding half a bottle of hard liquor? No one is.
Yeah.
You know?
And
yeah, like I mean, it's that constant, that toxic. Toxic wasn't even talked about in 02, 03, like it is now. But yeah, the toxic masculinity, because they're even having a party at the office celebrating the win. And they were all doing it. Riding the lawyer's scooter and, it's just not what you do. You go, let's all just go have a moment to think about what we can learn from this experience. Count ourselves fortunate.
A little subtext of the movie is, alcohol plays a pretty big part in a lot of it too. So I don't think that was, but just by the by, that's a sort of an influence for a lot of it. So,
anything else you want to talk about as far as themes go? Like, I really do think the main theme is just that,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like to make meaning out of these deaths. And there really are three.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we just limit ourselves to that one conversation, notwithstanding 215 children who died in a couple of years, 1950, circa 1950. Who knows? Records were poor then. But I think that seems to be the key theme here. If this is what it takes, these people died, but change, or at least they got to tell their story without it being immediately questioned. Of course it was immediately questioned.
I mean, it is about justice, but it's almost a different kind of justice, I think, as well. It's almost introducing, instead of just throwing somebody in jail, it's like there could have been a different way to sort of go about this, but that ultimately didn't happen. So there was no reconciliation.
Well, and that's going back to that tragic nature of Cross.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give Dowson too much credit, like the guy or the character. That said, his girlfriend says, "How come you're always carrying this ball? How come you've got the ball?" Somebody's gotta do the cleanup, do the dirty work to get and I think in a way he looks better in this film than Herb Stevens, who did. He's like, well, you're fine, you're great. It's all those, I've heard those words at City Hall myself, that full faith in you and blah, blah, blah. Because if it all goes sideways, it's like, well, I had full faith and he was running that and he was coordinating that. And, Herb Stevens is like in the movie, is as weaselly as any other piece of crap senior manager, who's like, really loves being senior manager, really loves making decisions. And boy, do they love their middle management chumps who are gonna,
take it.
Take it, be literally the fall guy. It in some ways, looking back, and if memory serves, Jim, it is 20 plus years. Oh, geez. Over 30 years ago now, when Dowson, I remember that myself personally, mad that we were denied the truth. You can infer so much, but because he kills himself with a totally self-serving, even the letter sounds legit. I think that was, I think they may have been quoting from it, But it doesn't matter. It's like, you fucking coward. You did not come before the public. The public was denied. The Harper family was denied, but the public was denied that knowledge of what, okay, you could have came and you could have just, you know, and even do your fall on the sword thing publicly, but tell us what the happened.
Yeah.
You know, nope, never got that. And it was just such a finky, you know, move that I even now certainly didn't have sympathy for him then, have a hard time having sympathy for him now. Cause it's like, they're just these guys are such self-righteous hypocrites. You know, it's always, you have to, and oh God, it's well, we don't have evidence for that when it's one of their buddies, but they will imply, hint, say anything when they're convinced you're the bad guy. F that.
Yeah. You know, there's so many
sure
things
that's
that
really
touch
a thematic message.
No. I should say that I was downtown. If I'm thinking of the right police funeral, I'm pretty sure I passed by when they had it at that cathedral. Is it St. Mary's on Graham, right across from the Millennium Library? And I saw a bunch of activity. I asked somebody about it, and they said, "Yeah, it's Dowson." I'm pretty sure I was sort of, you know, going to university at that time, but I would have been there, sort of in and about, you know, going to classes that one day, and stumbled across it, or something like that. So, yeah.
And it's the, well, you know what? I'm wondering if it's now time. Like it still is. It's a 90-minute movie. It's an 88-minute movie, including title and end credits. You know, not a lot. And they did keep it tight, which is why it works given its budget and everything. So I do think, before we get into our final thoughts and worth your time and director pass or fail, maybe it's time to tell them, Jim, what everyone's winning next week. I think we got a question we're going to ask. I think we're asking if something holds up. Why don't you tell us what we are? Tell us about this next flick there, Mr. Jaboyko. Maybe people have heard of it.
It was a brave...
It's
a
50
brave
years
little
old
group
now.
of independent filmmakers. Oh, Jesus.
Another set of indie filmmakers. Wow.
So we're taking a look at, does it hold up? Raiders of the Lost Ark. Bing bong. There we go. Joined by our esteemed guest, Eric Williams, as well. And yeah, it should be a good one.
Folks, just want to make sure you understand, Eric's going to be there at the start for an interview. We're gonna have some fun with that. Whether or not he'll stick around after that, that's TBD. Don't want you guys to say, but it is. It's going to be a jam show. We're going to have a great time. We're going to see if this thing holds up. This thing. We're going to have a great time with a real screenwriting professor, a guy who has had his own scripts written and produced, written books on the subject, including, and again I'll say, the screenwriter's taxonomy. I don't even get an end off of that, Jim, and I still love. It's got to be one of my favorite books I've bought on film and filmmaking in the last year. Mm-hmm. And I bought a few, not a zillion, but my filmmaking analysis library continues to grow. And I'm amazed at how much this one is just, it stays in the top 10. And,
well, that's good. That's good.
All right. Let's keep going. Oh, and here's Richard did, before we move forward, he did part of the research, Balmoral Street Research Regulars.
Thank you, sir.
Further to the history, the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry was announced by an NDP order in council April 13th, 88, after the government fell, but before the election. Okay. So, is it Jim Dowling or no?
Yeah, I think you're right.
The speaker, he was mad. He is Save Patel rep. The Save Patel where we grew up. Anyway, yeah, so there's the history on that. And yeah, let's move forward. What do we have next here? Norma Bailey. Did she pass or fail?
Oh, absolutely passed. Yeah, she did great.
I want to give her a solid, like, this is a B plus A effort.
Yeah.
Again, coming to given the resources, given the sensitivities, given the, I think she did a great job. Now,
The
that
heaviness.
say that again?
The heaviness of the subject too.
Yes. Yeah.
Did really well.
Yeah, and I do. Jim Walding was the guy. Thank you very much, Richard. The only bummer is, and this is something, it was too late. We'd always been talking about bringing this movie on, and then when we finally decided to make it happen, it's like, I don't think I have enough time to find someone like an Indigenous person, that Indigenous film buff who could also provide us some context. And it's like, okay, you know what? So I was like, okay, I'm not going to race around because that can just blow up in our face. What I do want to say, though, on this is we've passed judgment on this film. It's two middle-aged white guys. It's only been the first time that I was like, yeah, we are in Treaty 1 land. And although I've always admired when people have quoted that, it's not been part of my shtick. And it's only today, on only the second film in over a year, Jim, Indigenous film in Canada as a Canadian, that we've done it. So it's like, take a lot of what we said with a grain of salt. There's going to be other sources out there, other people talking about this, but I don't know about you, Jim, I am so glad we did this. And yeah, I do. Yeah. I think Norma Bailey deserves an A. Yeah, like you said, given the sensitivities, the like you said, the weight, the heft. Yeah.
And it
pass.
Again, I use this phrase a lot, light on its feet, especially considering what the subject matter is. So, yeah.
No, I agree. All right. That comes, then we're getting into final thoughts.
Sure.
What do you want to add?
Okay. This is what I want to add. Familiar things about Winnipeg that, again, not to have too much fun with this because it's a heavy topic, but Duffy's Taxi, CKY, the TV station with the old CKY logo. Everybody sort of vaguely looked, all the cops with mustaches vaguely looked like former weatherman Stan Kubitschek. I don't know if you pick even Curry Graham. The familiar streets, actual winter, the brutalist public safety building, the Arlington Street Bridge. When I said earlier that every film is a historical document, that bridge is not going to be around for too much longer.
Much like the BSB. Yeah.
Public safety building is gone. And there's a number of things too. There's in the shots of the lawyer's office in the background. I was trying to figure out what those were. Other things, the legislative bathroom, King's Head before its expansion. And I like the
You're
police
right.
sedan.
Yes.
Yeah. And police sedans, which still are in the Santa Claus parade, oddly enough. Two elements of full disclosure, which I should have mentioned off the top. The one that played the Weasley CKY cameraman, the gentleman that played that, Rick Skeen, was my drama professor. So for the limited drama courses that I took. So there's that. And my father was
and his wife played Rick's wife played Robert Cross's wife.
Oh, okay.
Bringing up the baby.
Oh, yeah.
As he's passed out on the couch.
Where Sarah Constable, who you and I have seen in plays here, a really good one about the suffragette movement a few years ago at MTC. She was in it, and she played a reporter. It was a fairly small part. So lots of neat things going on there. Also wanted to mention the one that played Harvey Pollock, who actually had a part in Caddyshack. Which is kind of a brag point. Jack Bloom. Anyway, he was kind of a neat character and a neat thing. But and the last little bit of full disclosure, which I maybe should have mentioned off the top, my father in the 1960s was a St. Boniface police officer, not part of Winnipeg
Really?
because they were separate cities at the time. But yeah, so he worked at a St. Boniface newspapers on the front page when he got set upon by some larrikins that had broken into a factory or something fairly close to me where I live now, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and he was clobbered on the head. Yeah, and he's there in his hospital bed, shirtless, on the front page of the Winnipeg Free Press and Tribune. So, yeah,
that's crazy. That's
yeah.
I want to say awesome, but then I'm like, that's in poor taste.
Well, it's I have him floating around somewhere. I should have brought him out for this, but maybe another time.
Yeah, for myself, couple of items.
Sure.
One, so searched, did some. This is probably the film I've done the most research on, in part because it is a sensitive thing. It's something we're still dealing with today, and in some ways, there's part of me. It's like, oh, we've made no progress, and even myself, I'm a white male. I've enjoyed the benefits of that, and there's a part of me kind of going, well, what have I fucking done? I mean, at times, there's been times in my life where I'm like, no, I'm solid here. And looking back, it's like in my 50s, I'm like, I was nowhere near as solid as I thought I was. So I wanted to, as best as we can, given the format of our show and everything, at least treat it with the seriousness it deserves.
Yes, yeah.
End up the police website. Oh, on this, click on that, and it's like, oh no, doesn't exist anymore. What you do get is the Winnipeg Police, and I'm going to pull this up here, folks.
Sure.
I should have had it ready, and I kind of screwed the pooch here. Okay. There we are. Okay, so we got our modern history.
Oh.
Chief Herb Stevens. So,
who I saw downtown once. We were riding on opposite escalators at the bay, and I thought, oh, it's the chief of police. I was going down, and he was coming up, or I was going up, whatever. But you just like, yeah. And he knew that I saw him and recognized him, but way back.
Here's the let's get this on the screen here. All right, so we've got modern history. What's old becomes new. A lot of chatter about how the uniforms changed, the cars changed. Let's go to Herb Stevens. And here's Herb Stevens' entry. It's a page and change. I believe even Ken Dowson is in this picture. No. I'm not 100% sure on that, but there's Herb on the end there. And this is disturbing, folks. I'll read the... So AJI, this is their, okay, the Herb Stevens years, Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. That makes sense. Once again, the department was plunged into a black period in 1988 when J.J. Harper, an Aboriginal man, died after a confrontation with an officer while being spot-checked by the officer who was searching for a male who fled from a stolen car. It's the same bullshit. It's the same bullshit we've been hearing out of the United States now. That, well, this person, and there was a confrontation, and then a gun went off. Like the
passive voice,
the passive voice,
and died.
The passive voice and the justification was being spot checked. Yeah. He was chasing someone, even though the inquest demonstrated that Cross knew the guy had been caught already. It was on the radio. They had caught both suspects. He saw it's almost like a dog going, oh, well, there's something to hunt. He saw a native and went to roast him.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. The police investigation ruled that this had been an accidental death caused by the officer in the execution of his duty. There was a public outcry and a demand for an inquiry by an outside agency. It was eventually established under Judge Murray Sinclair, even though there's another judge. But they want to get the, well, you know, it was a native, it was an Indian, like just. And I'm perhaps reading too much into this, but it's worthy of continue to look at, and became known as the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. No, that's what it was called in its title. It didn't become known. It wasn't. It's like Jesus Christ. This is their museum that can't get their own fucking history right. Pardon my poor language. Okay. The purpose was to look into the deaths of Mr. Harper and Helen Betty Osborne, who had been killed some years before at the Paw.
The Paw, yeah.
And no, it was, and it's explicit in the mandate, Indigenous or Aboriginal at the time, Aboriginal experience with the justice system in Manitoba. That was really the key thing. And also, hey, let's look at these specific cases that have given rise to the community. Like, I mean, we're not as bigoted as we were then. We're still pretty bigoted, I'd say, as a province. There's some pockets of it that are just outright horrible. Mm-hmm. That said, even then, a lot of it's like Tim Chuck, is that the character who picked up the phone? It's even that guy's like, yeah, that's not right. A lot of Winnipeggers were like, yeah, this smells like it just smelled bad from the get-go. This isn't 1968 where it never would have made any the times were changing, except in the Winnipeg Police Department. Mm-hmm. So the results of the inquiry concluded that finally we get a name. And then all of a sudden he's reported like it's somebody unrelated to them. Here's his official title. Concluded that Constable Robert Cross had used excessive force in the fatal confrontation. The incident inquiry had a devastating effect on the department. A devastating effect on the department as Constable Cross suffered such mental stress that he never returned to duty, and a respected senior officer, Inspector Ken Dowson, took his own life before he was to testify. For fuck's sakes. And I'll finish the job just because it's, you know, The lengthy report of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry did eventually bring about a number of changes in attitude and procedure for the police.
E.g., we couldn't tell naughty jokes at lunchtime anymore. I mean, you know, like,
and then some crap about hey, look, we changed our appearance. And then Herb Stephen resigned in 1991, not connecting the two. Like, Jim.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That is fucking appalling. This is their goddamn museum. This is their institutional memory of that time. Devastating effect. A member couldn't return. A guy killed himself. No, fuck. He's a fucking citizen.
Yeah.
Dead on the ground.
Slaughtered.
Because this asshole's wandering around with a fucking gun waving around and decided, I want to pick a fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's pretty, you know, and a lot of times they get, you know, just people, volunteers and stuff, they write that out, but that's some pretty bad writing. I would also avoid the use of the phrase execution of duty when you're talking about someone that was
executing someone.
Yes. they're just, and again, it's that read the room, guys. Like, not even in the little museum write-up, you know, are they reading the room? All these years later.
Yeah. Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
Their inability to read a room, their sensitivity. I have had a couple of arguments with police back in the old job, and sometimes And I got this weird kind of a dichotomy. Like, there's some cops I loved working with. There are some that I was like, that is the straightest shooter I have ever met. And of course, you never know the full picture, right? Like, that said, you know what? There's just some great human beings. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
that, but yes, as an organization, yeah, they're like, as an organization, it's why procedure is so important, because when the chips are down, yeah, if you haven't already made a decision, this is how we're going to deal with it when this happens. Yeah, when the stress hits,
Ouch.
they're all human beings. That's the other thing I think we saw, but I don't think it was on purpose, is how regular these people are. You know, Herb Stevens, like any senior member, any senior manager, you're at that level, you're 60%, 70% politician and
Oh, yeah.
ambitious. No one just falls into that job.
No.
It wasn't, I've made this snarky remark a million times because I love it and it works. It was the only job. I had a wife and children. I could only be the chief of police. That was it. I was forced to take it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
Nope.
I could only be the Attorney General of California. It was the only thing left to me.
That accidental falling into a job is such a false narrative. It's just
Yeah.
like, no, generally people want these jobs. I just became a model this way.
Yeah.
It just, no.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so that is, I mean, I can say more, but I'm not gonna. That is the thing I think we need to, the final thought I want to leave everyone is, yeah, Winnipeg as a community has a lot more work to do. There are things, what are the, and definitely the Winnipeg Police Service. Just calling it a service and changing your uniform doesn't change the simple fact that your fucking museum misses the point.
yeah, quite.
like right down to having some of their fundamental facts wrong. And because I could go all night about this.
Let's go to the museum.
All right. Yeah, folks, thanks very much for sticking with us and having a good time with us. You guys are the best chat on the internet. I know there wasn't as much to say. This film, I do think it's got a lot of meat, but
Yeah.
that said, it was so efficient in its delivery. It was so well done, given the constraints on it. Like, is it an Oscar winner? No. There are better, higher emotion films out there. But I gotta say, this should go up there in some of the best Canadian filmmaking, that actually relates to your and I regular lives.
Canadian cop movies. Like I was watching this, I thought this should rank somewhere. I mean, it's that good. It's that tight, tense. It's important. It's an important movie,
Yeah.
and it's sort of it's nice that it's on YouTube and people can watch it. But it's a good one.
Well, and it doesn't really fit. I should have mentioned it earlier. Another thing, though, a great choice in the story is, although, sometimes we'll see Native and white person together. They hire Harvey Pollack, a white lawyer. They don't show any obvious, like, really weird, like in some American films of this kind, they'll show some weird sort of head-butting moment and you don't really get us and, that kind of thing. They have a bit of a bit about the dad's got to go get dad's pipe, but what we saw was natives with natives. And I think that's a great choice, that it was Indigenous people interpreting their experience to each other. Again, why I think it was a class-conscious film. But that's a great storytelling choice that will have cops amongst themselves. A lot of times, they love to pair, we'll have an Indigenous cop or an Indigenous activist and white woman reporter and maybe a black police officer, and they're all just trying to make it all work because can't we all just get along? Not this film. They didn't go for that. And I think that was a great choice.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I really am done talking about this movie.
Sure.
Do you have one more thing you want to add? Because
I do.
Okay.
I actually do. It's really quick. It was a little bit disappointing doing some research after this. There's, and you found something.
I need one quickly. I need one more. I need one more chyron that says one more thing.
One more thing, yeah.
Go.
But before we finish, before we say goodnight, there's not tons online. Like I checked the Free Press. There's a few. There's a Brad Oswald movie review. There's a couple of Gordon Sinclair articles about the making of the movie and the after effects of the movie. It was a APTN and CBC co-production. Apparently, it had quite a lot of trouble getting to screen until APTN, which is the Aboriginal People's Television Network, for people who may not know. APTN, right? Yeah. That sort of brought it out of development hell. But there's not tons online about J.J. Harper. There's a Wikipedia entry. It's not long or super detailed. There's lurid, love triangle murders in the States that are better documented than this. There's really not pictures. I was looking for pictures of Cross. I was looking for pictures of Dawson. What you'll find is like some pictures of Adam Beach as J.J. Harper, but it was kind of disappointing. Online, there's not much of a presence for what an important thing it was for the Winnipeg area, and it'd be nice to sort of right that ship, see if something can be done about that. But anyhow, that's just the last point I wanted to make.
No, that's a fantastic point. Okay, everybody, another great. Oh my goodness. I think my music stopped again. Every now and then it randomly just...
It's like when you go to Safeway and the music's off and you're like, why is it so quiet in here?
Well, it seems like it's doing something.
I can gargle some show tunes.
Oh, there we go. I think we got something now. Who knows? Oh! There we are. Not that we need the tunes to say goodbye to everyone, but I think that's right, actually. Everyone, thank you all very much for coming. You are the best chat on the internet. Whether there's a dozen of you in here or just a few, a little more intimate, I think you're just all awesome, and Jim and I really do appreciate you guys, dedicating a part of your Sunday evening to listen to us, for the most part, talk about movies. Don't forget next week, again, as Jim said earlier, we're asking the question, does Raiders of the Lost Ark hold up? So be sure, and we've got, again, Mr. Eric All Williams, Professor Williams will be joining us. So make sure you show for that one on June 27th. Of course, at 9:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time here in North America, Universal Coordinated Time -5. And I think that's about it, Jim? Richard, let's make sure Richard and Katie, thank you both for coming. Walt 65, or Vlad 65, real name Walt of Walt's Flick Picks. Go check him out. You'll have to search Vlad 65 Gamer, and if you haven't already, he's got a video already rocketing up the charts. His analysis of his chat about what is it again? Oh,
Ice Cold and Alex was the last one, or Day of the Jackal?
No. He's got a really popular one, Day of the Jackal. North of 1,000, coming up on 2,000.
Great,
so go check it out. And congratulations on that, Vlad. All right, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Richard and Katie, thank you very much for coming. Vlad65, thank you. Ahmed, thanks for coming by. Really appreciate that. Oh, excuse me. Terrible burp. With Shashank, again, if you make it to this far at the end, thank you very much. Great to see you. And folks, remember, next month, you can even, if you want to, here's a little hint. I'm not telling you what the movie we're going to look at, but we will be doing a breakfast show. Why is that? On July 18th, because our man in Chennai, Shashank Vachari, is going to be joining us. And I'm super excited about that. Who else do we got here? I think I covered everyone. I mentioned Katie, and I got Richard, and I've got Walt, and I got Shashank, and I've got, boy, we got some of the OG, really the OG folks, and that's great. And again, I think that's about it, eh, Jim?
I think
What
so,
do you,
yeah. So that's a wrap.
All right. Well, everybody, I think then this is what we're going to do. We're now going to bring down the tunes.
And as JJ Harper says,